first thing you learn is that normal stops meaning anything you used to wake up, check your phone, make coffee, late to work again. But now you wake up and you don't know what city you're in, and the face in the mirror looks like yours, but the eyes are different. They're older, they're scared, they're looking for exits, even in the bathroom. It started 6 months ago, but it feels like a lifetime because in witness protection, time doesn't move forward, it just circles around the thing you saw, the thing you can't unsee. We're at the wrong place, at the wrong time. That's what the U.S. Marshal told you when they put you in the car. That first night you kept saying I didn't do anything wrong, and he kept saying I know. But you saw someone who did, and that makes you the only thing between them and freedom. You remember the moment clearly, even though you've tried to bury it. You were picking up food at a diner that stayed open late because your refrigerator broke, and you needed milk for the morning, and you walked past a booth, and a man looked up and your eyes met for half a second, and you kept walking, and then you heard the sound. Not loud, like in movies, it was soft, like a pillow being dropped, and then a woman's gasp, and then running, and you turned, and the man was gone, and another man was slumped over the table, and there was blood spreading like spilled coffee. And you were the only one still standing there, the only one who saw his face. Didn't know then that looking into someone's eyes for half a second would cost you everything. The police came and you told them what you saw and they said thank you. And you went home and you thought that was the end, but 3 days later, 2 men in suits knocked on your door and asked you to come with them, and you thought you were in trouble. But they said no, you're in danger. They showed you a photo and asked, is this the man? And you said yes, and they looked at each other and one of them said, that man is connected to people who don't like witnesses. And you said, what does that mean? And he said, it means you need to disappear for a while. You laughed because disappear for a while sounded like a vacation, but your hands were shaking, and they noticed that night you packed one bag, and you left your apartment with the milk still in the fridge, and the TV still on, and you haven't seen it since. The first safe house was a motel outside a town you never learned the name of, and you stayed in a room with no windows and a guard outside your door, and you watched old movies on a small TV, and you told yourself it would be weeks, maybe a month, and then you'd go home, but weeks turned into months, and the faces of the marshals kept changing, and every time you asked, when can I go back, they said soon, and you stopped believing soon, a long time ago. You learned to stop saying your real name. You learned to stop checking your old phone, even though you kept it in a drawer charged because somewhere in it were photos of your mother, your sister, your friends, who probably think you just vanished. You learned that paranoia isn't a feeling, it's a survival skill. Every time you go outside, you scan every face. You look for hands in pockets. You look for anyone looking at you too long. You look for the man from the diner, even though they told you he's in custody. Awaiting trial, you still see him in crowds. You still feel his eyes on you, and then one day they tell you the trial date is set, and you're going to testify, and your stomach drops. Because testifying means being in the same room with him. Testifying means saying his name out loud while he watches. Testifying means there's no more night before they move you to a new location closer to the courthouse. You don't sleep, you lie in the dark, and you think about what you're going to say. And you think about what happens after, and you think about whether you'll ever stop running. Marshals drive you to the courthouse in an unmarked car, and you sit in the back seat with your head down, and you feel every red light. Like it's a countdown inside the courthouse. It's cold and quiet, and you're led through hallways that feel like tunnels. And finally you're in a small room, with a table and a Bible, and a prosecutor who tells you just tell the truth, and you want to say the truth is what got me here. And then you walk into the courtroom, and you see him. He looks different. In a suit, but his eyes are the same, and when they meet yours for the second time in your life, you feel it in your chest like a hand squeezing your heart. You take the stand and you swear to tell the truth, and you look at the jury, and you look at the judge, and you try not to look at him, but your eyes keep drifting back because he's watching you, like you're the only person in the room. The prosecutor asks you questions, and you answer, and your voice sounds far away like it belongs to someone else, and you describe that night, the diner, the milk, the man, the sound, the blood, and you hear someone in the gallery crying and you realize it might be you. Then the defense attorney stands up and walks toward you, and you've been warned. About this you've been told they'll try to break you, they'll try to make you sound confused or liar or forgetful, and she asks you, how can you be sure it was my client? You only saw his face for a second, and you say, because I'll never forget it. And she says, but you were tired, it was late, you said your refrigerator broke. You were just getting milk, you weren't expecting to witness a murder, so how can you be certain your memory is accurate? And you feel the doubt creeping in like cold water, and you look at the jury and you see them wondering the same thing, and you look at him and he's almost smiling, and you take a breath and you say, I'm certain, because I looked into his eyes and I saw nothing there, no regret, no fear, no humanity, just emptiness, and that kind of emptiness doesn't fade. The courtroom goes silent. The defense attorney stares at you for a long moment, and then she sits down, and you know something shifted, but you don't know what. The trial lasts 3 more days, and you spend them in a hotel room with no windows, watching the news for updates. And on the 4th day, the marshals come to your door, and one of them smiles and says, guilty on all counts, and you exhale for the first time in 6 months. You think it's over, but that night you're lying in bed, and you realize you're still checking the locks, you're still listening for footsteps. You're still seeing his face every time you close your eyes, and the marshal told you there might be appeals, there might be retrials, there might be people who want to send a message, and you realize that testifying wasn't the end, it was just the end of one chapter. You're given a new identity, a new city, a new life. You learn your new name like memorizing lines in a play. You practice saying it in the mirror until it doesn't feel like a lie. You get an apartment in a building where no one knows you, and you get a job where no one asks questions, and you start existing instead of living. And sometimes you almost forget, but then you see someone in a crowd who looks like him, or you hear a sound that reminds you of that night, or you wake up at 3 a.m. with your heart pounding and no memory of the dream, and you remember that you're a witness just in a courtroom, but in life, you're someone who saw something and carried it and survived it. And even though no one knows your real name, you know what you did, you know what it cost, and you know that somewhere out there justice happened because you had the courage to look into emptiness and name it. Tears passed. You build something small but real, a life with routines and maybe someone who knows part of your story, not all of it, but enough to love you. And one day you're walking down the street, and you pass a diner, and you stop and you look inside, and you see a man sitting alone drinking coffee, and for a second, your heart stops, but then he looks up and he's just a stranger with kind eyes, and he smiles, and you smile back, and you keep walking, and you realize that not every face is a threat, not every glance is a warning, and that maybe someday, you'll stop looking over your shoulder, but not today. You'll just keep walking forward. Because that's what survivors do. They walk forward even when they don't know what's ahead, even when the past is breathing down their neck. You're a witness. You saw the truth and you spoke it, and it cost you everything, but it also gave you something back, a strength you didn't know you had, a knowledge that you can face the worst and still find a way to live. And as you disappear into the crowd, a stranger on the street, you carry that with you like a secret, like a scar, like a badge of honor. No one knows your name, but you know what you did, and that's enough.